I really think the key for doing word problems or application problems is making sure that the first thing you do is define your variables, because once you define your variables, then you at least know what you're looking for in the problem. Then, once you have variables, you can sort of work through the wording to come up with or create the equation itself. So for number 2, it says a test has 20 questions worth 100 points. The test consists of true-false questions worth 3 points and 3 points each, and multiple choice questions worth 11 points each. So it asks how many multiple choice questions are on the test, how many true-false. So right there, when it asks you what you're looking for, those become your variables. So I'm just going to make M my multiple choice. And I'm going to make T the true-false. And you guys can use X and Y, but for me, it just gets confusing because then it's just one more thing I have to keep track of, what's X and what's Y. So if I give them variables that start with what I'm actually trying to find, it just makes more sense. So we're going to need a question, or we're going to need an equation for the question types, and then we're going to need an equation for the points of the questions. So the first equation is going to be the points. So it says we have a total of 100 points, but the true-false are 3 points each, and the multiple choice are 11 points each. So that's literally our first equation. So 3 points for each multiple choice plus 11 points for each true-false equals 100 points for the total test. Then the next equation is going to be the number of questions on the test, and that's right here. It says, okay, well, this test has 20 questions. So the total of multiple choice, I'm just going to make that a capital M. The total of multiple choice and true-false all together on the test is 20 total questions. So now I have 2 equations, a system of equations, and you guys can either choose to solve it using substitution or elimination. You could solve for M or T in that second equation and then substitute it in. I'm just going to multiply that second equation by a -3, and then I can add them together. So that will give us -3 M minus 3T equals -60. And now I can add these 2 equations together. So what I end up with, 3m and -3m goes away, 11 and -3t gives me 8t equaling 100 plus -60 is 40. Divide by 8. And you get true-false to be 5 questions. So if we plug that back into our equation, one of the 2, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to plug it into the bottom one. So we have M plus 5, and you guys can probably do this in your head, equals 20. So if we subtract 5, that means we have 15 multiple choice questions. So there are a total of 5 true-false, 15 multiple choice, which would equal 20 total questions. And you guys can always go back and plug that in, remember, and check to make sure, okay, if that is the case, when we multiply the 5 times 3 and 15 times 11, does that add up to 100 points? But that's it. We'll do one more together here. Number 3, we're talking about pets, and it says Margie is responsible for buying a week's supply of food and medication for the dogs and cats at a local shelter. So the food and medication for each dog costs twice as much as those supplies for a cat. She needs to feed 164 cats and 24 dogs. If her budget, or it says her budget is $4,240. So how much can Margie spend on each dog for food and medication? So $4,240 seems like a lot. So in order for us to figure out how much she can spend for each dog, we have to figure out, okay, well, what can she spend on the cat? So we need the cost of both the cat and dog. So those are going to be my two variables. C is going to be cat. And you can probably guess D will be dog. Now this one's actually almost kind of confusing to figure out what the two equations are, because it's almost too simple. So I'm going to make an equation for this sentence here. It says the food and medication for each dog costs twice as much as those supplies for a cat. So the cost of one dog is equal to twice the cost of a cat. So that's it. D equals 2C. That's my first equation. Then it says she needs to feed 164 cats and 24 dogs with her budget of $4,240. So that's my second equation. 164C plus 24D equals her budget of $4,240. So what we're going to do is just use substitution here. We know that D is equivalent to twice that of a cat. So we're going to substitute that in for our D value. So this becomes 164C plus 24 instead of D, it's going to be 2C equals 4,240. And now we're left, of course, with an equation with only one variable, solving for the cat cost. So 164C plus now 48, C equals 4240. 164 plus 48 is 212. Oops. So 212C equals 4240, and we just need to divide both sides by 212. So the cost of a cat is going to be $20. So if we know that a cat costs $20, that means the cost for a dog is twice that. So a dog is going to cost $40 to give it food and medication. So she can spend $40 on each dog for food and medication. So it's really just sort of trying to make sure you set up your variables by figuring out what it is exactly that they're asking you to find, and then working through the words and reading through the words to set up your equation.